In this video, we will explain how the principle of secularism emerged in Europe, evolving from the medieval period to modern times. Let's begin by exploring the origins of two of today's well-known words, laïcité and secularism. The French term laïcité and the English term secularism are used to refer to the separation of religion and state, the absence of state participation in religious issues and vice versa. The term secular derives from the Latin word saculum, which means an age or era. Saculum was used to mean the longest potential lifetime of a human, roughly 100 or more years. It is also the origin of the term century in Romance languages. In Latin, saculum was used to distinguish the temporal era of this world from the everlasting, divine realm of God. The French term laïc originates from the Latin laicus, which itself derives from the Greek laikos. It means from the people, contrary to clericos, which means from the clergy. In medieval times, both laic and secular designated people who took religious vows but lived out of monastic communities, in contrast to those who cloistered themselves in monasteries. The principle of separation of religion and state is a result of the historical conflict between the Church and state in the Western world. During the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church and European states often claimed authority over the same areas. As the Church grew, it became increasingly rival to the state. In certain periods of European history, there existed de facto two states, the state of the Church and the temporal state. In the course of the emergence of Christianity, Christians were unconcerned about temporal power. This approach was expressed in the quote by Jesus, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." In his teachings, St. Paul maintained that it was the duty of Christians to obey civil authorities, as all authority derives from God. This loyalty likely contributed to Christians gaining unlimited religious freedom within the Roman Empire in the early 4th century, eventually leading to Christianity becoming the state religion by the late 4th century. As the state was constantly declining in the Western Roman Empire, the Church quickly began to pursue ambitions of independence. Popes began developing theories that claimed the Church's supremacy over both spiritual and temporal matters, arguing that the Church held ultimate power, even over kings. These ideas evolved, reinforcing the Church's dominance over state authority throughout medieval Europe. The conflict between the Church and temporal powers continued into the next centuries. The lack of strong central authority after the collapse of the Roman Empire, combined with a limited economic structure and the weak position of local authorities in relation to the Church, which held universal bureaucracy and vast lands, enabled the Church to consolidate its unity and gain immense supranational power throughout the medieval ages. The clash between Philip IV of France and Pope Boniface VIII in 1296 over clergy taxation is a notable example of the ongoing church-state confrontations throughout the Middle Ages. Despite the Pope's protests, Philip imposed taxes on French clerics and convened the States General to accuse Boniface of heresy. This event signaled the state's triumph over the papacy in the struggle for worldly supremacy, leading to Europe's political fragmentation as independent states challenged the Church's authority. Against the Church's established position, new teachings were developed legitimizing the independence of the temporal authority. In the 14th century, thinkers like Dante, William of Ockham, and Marsiglio of Padua contributed to the debate on church and state relations, with some advocating for the separation of their roles and others challenging papal authority in favor of greater state control. Marsiglio of Padua, in Defensor Pacis, 1324, imagined a secular state where the rights of citizens were independent of their faith, and no one could be punished for their religion. The trend of the age upheld rather the views of popular theologians Aquinas and Augustine, according to which heresy was the most serious evil and offense, for which the only appropriate punishment was execution. Thus, the notion of freedom of religion and tolerance was unfamiliar throughout the medieval period. The medieval Church held absolute power over the belief of all individuals. The Reformation was a struggle against the Church and marked the beginning of the wars of religion. The Renaissance, fueled by major discoveries, commerce, and a rising bourgeoisie, marked a key phase in the rise of secular thought. Thinkers like Machiavelli, Bodin, More, Hobbes, and Grotius advanced secularization in political philosophy. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church itself faced dissenting movements which gave rise to the Reformation in the 16th century under the guidance of the Protestant theorists Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Ulrich Zwingli. The Protestant Reformation was sparked by Martin Luther's 95 Theses on October 31, 1517. In his 1523 treatise, he argued for the separation of church and state, asserting that the two are distinct realms governed by God but must remain independent. The ensuing religious wars, including England's break from Rome and the bloody conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, underscored the need for church-state separation. There had been no sign of religious freedom and tolerance for a long time. Seeing the division of his country through religious conflicts, John Locke published his works A Letter Concerning Toleration, 1689, and two treatises of government, in which he emphasized the separation of church and state, and promoted religious tolerance and individual rights. Locke's two treatises of government laid the foundation for modern liberal political theory and played a key role in shaping secular political thought by promoting natural rights and the idea of the social contract. Less than a century later, Locke's ideas, along with the political theories of the 18th century Enlightenment imported from France, exerted great influence on the American Revolution. The French Constitution endorsed the revolutionary principle of laïcité at the end of the French Revolution, ensuring the separation of church and state. The concept of a secular state became clearer in the Age of Enlightenment. The works of Enlightenment thinkers such as Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau challenged the notion of religious uniformity, advocating for the separation of church and state to enable governance based on reason. All these currents of Enlightenment thought constituted the philosophical basis of the 1789 French Revolution, which put an end to the authority of the monarchy along with the Catholic Church. Religious liberty was announced firstly in the 1789 French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, and then in the 1791 French Constitution. In 1795, the new constitution declared the separation of church and state by prohibiting the state from recognizing or subsidizing any religion. In the aftermath of the French Revolution, Catholicism was harshly persecuted and public prayers were suppressed. The struggle between the Church, monarchists, and Republicans continued throughout the 19th century. The French state maintained its radical anti-clericalism to a large extent until the Concordat of 1801. France entered the Concordat regime in 1802, following the agreement signed on July 15, 1801, between the first consul, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Pope Pius VII. The Concordat made Catholicism the official religion of France, a regime that continued for a century. After the establishment of the Third Republic in 1870, the anti-clericalism current rose substantially among the Republicans. The Republicans regarded the Church as their common enemy since it continued to cooperate with the monarchists. Between 1881 and 1903, comprehensive secularization policies were implemented, especially in education. The process culminated with the 1905 law on the separation of church and state, which guaranteed freedom of conscience and worship, prohibited the state from recognizing or funding any religion, and declared religious buildings state property. This law completed the secularization process that began in the medieval period with opposition from various European kings, was envisioned by Enlightenment philosophers, and was set in motion by the French Revolution. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe for more. Stay tuned for our next video.